What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of You Got Boston after the Celtics 102-100 loss to the Philadelphia 76ers. They dropped to 5-7 on the season, and this is a tough one, another tough, kind of heartbreaking clutch time loss for the Celtics. This one, the result of a Kelly Oubre putback layup. Jaylen Brown was caught ball watching. He was pretty clear post game that he took responsibility for how that final possession went, and then the Celtics have the opportunity to tie it up. Derrick White misses a pretty deep three that I think he thought he had less time on the clock than he did after he was maybe fouled. He wasn't so sure and kind of lost the ball there, recovered it, but ultimately pulled up from deep. And it looked like maybe it was going to be a Neemias Queta alley-oop, but Queta was not able to convert, and the Celtics lose another tough one. And it feels like this whole season, they're just right there every single game, and then they lose. And so the first thing I'll say is, I mean, this team is super competitive. Again, that coming down to the final possession, previous game as well. They've had so many losses now that have just been so heartbreaking. The Utah Jazz one is the one that probably comes to mind most. Opening night, they lose to the Philadelphia 76ers by 1 point. It's just been one game after the other, and I think now they have 5 or 6 clutch time losses in just the first couple weeks of the season, and it's tough because a lot of it is you have guys on the court that have never been on the court for these moments before, but then at the same time, it's the veterans that have made some of these mistakes as well. I mean, Jaylen took ownership for his play on both ends of the floor. Derrick probably could have made a better play there on that last possession, although he was in kind of a tough spot there after he got bumped. But just in general, like this is the growing pain. These are the growing pains of a new team, of a young team, and they're experiencing them in real time right now. You know, it's not that this team can't compete. They have competed with the very best of them, and that's why I think entering tonight they were the only sub 500 team with a plus 2.5 or greater net rating. Like they have been a positive team by a lot of metrics, especially half court. Their half court defense has been elite. They've had a lot of metrics that have been indicators of success, but they just haven't been able to close out these games. And why is that? You know, I asked a couple of guys afterwards, does it feel like it's the result of inexperience? Derrick White said, you know, obviously experience helps and you can't do anything about the fact that you don't have it. But at the same time, I think there's also just some basketball mistakes. And at the end of the day, like one team has to win, one team has to lose. And I felt like they did enough in this game to win, but the 76ers just did a little bit more. So tough loss, certainly. It would have been fun to close out this road trip with another win and finish this pretty tough trip 2-1, playing against a physical Orlando Magic team twice. And then this Philadelphia 76ers team again here on the road. And the schedule doesn't get any easier because by the time you're watching this podcast, assuming you're watching this on Thursday night, they face the Grizzlies at home. And the Grizzlies have been a struggling team, but it's another back-to-back. Last time I was in Philadelphia was also the first night of a back-to-back. Last time they came away with a win and then followed that with a blowout loss against the Rockets at home the following night. So hopefully for the Celtics, they have a better outcome and they're more prepared tomorrow night. But it's been a really tough start to the season, back to backs, 3 games in 4 nights, just a lot going on, truthfully. And they've been relatively healthy. I mean, with the exception of Jason Tatum, the only players that have missed time is Xavier Tillman, who has missed 1 game for personal reasons, and Luka Garza missed a couple of games with a concussion. But other than that, they've had their full roster available. So this is just simple. Like that's what these games are coming down to. And Joe Mazzulla always says, it's 10 to 15 possessions. And right now they're making too many mistakes in those 10 to 15 possessions to win these games. And so I guess before I get into my couple of positive takeaways from this game, and I'll keep this one short because it is the first night of a back-to-back, and it's 1 a.m. here in Philadelphia, and we had a 2-hour post-game show, which you can check out in full. But the number one thing I'll say is we're seeing flashes of like a good basketball team and that's playing good for stretches. But it's just like I'm used to watching the Celtics play good for 42 minutes a night. And right now we're seeing them play good for 37 minutes a night. And that's the difference. Like that's all the difference between a win and a loss. That's why I feel like they were in position to win that game after a big third quarter, Jaylen Brown had a big third, Derrick White had a big third, Anthony gets hot in the fourth. They're playing consistently good defense. They out-rebounded the 76ers tonight. I never thought that I would say that after the way the season started. But it's just a couple too many mistakes that this team can't afford to make, and that's what it comes down to ultimately. So for those of you that entered the season wanting a lottery pick and wanting that to be the outcome from this sort of gap year, or however you want to call it, the players definitely don't want us to call it that, but I know that's how people have viewed it at home. You're getting competitive games and you're getting moments of player development, which we'll talk more about. But you're also getting a lot of losses. So for those of you that are rooting for losses, hopefully you're enjoying the ride. Certainly that's not where my head is at this point in the year, but I'll throw that out there for the positivity. I said the same thing after the Utah Jazz loss. That you're certainly at least kind of getting a check in that regard. The number one thing that I'm taking away from this one, as far as a positive takeaway, and this I didn't have to think hard about this one, is Jordan Walsh. Jordan Walsh, that as of I'm recording this late Tuesday night, a week ago, Jordan Walsh's career, I had no idea that he had anything going for him. Honestly, I really didn't know, because he was all DNPs his second year, first year all in the G League. First couple weeks here of the regular season, he seemed like he was the odd man out of the rotation. Now that looks like it's Chris Boucher or Xavier Tillman, but literally guy wasn't getting off the court, getting off the bench. And the Houston Rockets game last Saturday, he played a decent amount. That fourth quarter looked pretty good, looked pretty confident offensively, played hard, blowout minutes, nothing new. He's had blowout opportunities before, but he played well. And then a couple nights later, Wednesday night against the Washington Wizards, it feels like it's Jordan Walsh's coming out party. Like, he really helped turn that game around. And it's hard with these young guys, like one game, is there some continuity there, or is it just a couple of good minutes, or is Joe Mazzulla going to give him a bigger opportunity now because of that? I didn't know at the time. And he follows that Wizards game with back-to-back games against the Magic where he was really impactful, especially on the defensive end. And I always thought Jordan Walsh had the potential to be a good defender, but I didn't necessarily see it play out the way that it was pitched. Like, when he was drafted, it was like, this is a young guy who is super athletic, who has the body, the build, and the motor, but it just hasn't necessarily, he's 19 years old, he has very little experience. And over the past week, I feel like I've seen him guard at a level that I honestly didn't know he was capable of. And I'm sure his player development coaches and his teammates did know that, because they see behind the scenes the way that he defends at practice and training camp, and a lot more basketball than I get to see, especially because he hasn't been on the court all that much. But he had a nice summer league. He was solid on both ends. And what we've seen over the past week here in these 4 games, the Wizards game, the 2 Magic games on the road, and then this tonight against the 76ers, is a guy who is a lockdown defender. He was awesome on Paolo Banchero in that fourth quarter, in the win the other night against the 76ers. And I think in particular, the way he was able to limit a player of that caliber and of that size was super impressive, and studied his tendencies. And Joe Mazzulla gave him very clear-cut credit after the game of, like, he did an awesome job on Banchero. It's not the kind of thing that Joe oftentimes says to the press. And tonight, I think he did an awesome job on Tyrese Maxey. And that's a pretty versatile defender, a guy that can guard Tyrese Maxey the way that he was able to down the stretch, and then a guy that can guard Paolo Banchero. Like, those are 2 different kinds of players. And Maxey, I think, is one of the best guards in the league right now, one of the best scorers in the league. And the Celtics have had a really hard time slowing him down in recent matchups, regardless of whether it's Drew Holiday or Derrick White or Jaylen Brown, whoever else they throw on him. He has had their number a little bit. And down the stretch tonight, Jordan Walsh was disciplined. He gave it his best effort, and he forced like 2 or 3 stops that would have won the game had they secured that defensive rebound, or at least put them in position to go into overtime. And they make a couple more plays, and that's the story tonight, is like Jordan Walsh stepped up when it mattered most against one of the best scorers in the league. And so I didn't have to think too hard when I was thinking about what am I going to talk about on the podcast tonight. It's that this guy, who is still just 21 years old, who I think has been written off quite a bit, has come here over the past week and potentially changed the trajectory of his NBA career. And I know I have a tendency to sometimes be a little bit dramatic with these guys, and I root for them. I root for all of them. I honestly don't have like 1 or 2 guys that I'm like the most excited about when it comes to this pack. It's just, these are guys that are trying to break through in the NBA, that have worked really hard behind the scenes, that may or may not be able to do it. And so I always hope that they can, because why wouldn't I? And Jordan Walsh has just had a massive week. And so he won't smile after this one. He wants to win. And I asked him after the game, Jordan, you've been in the locker room a lot of times after these tough losses in the playoffs, crunch time games during the season. Being on the court now and having played like 30 minutes in this game, does it feel any different being like now sitting here talking to us, all of that, just processing that loss?
Yeah, it definitely, I think it feels maybe a little different. It still hurts equally as much, whether you're playing or not. You never want to have your guys, lose. But there's definitely an added sense of like, dang, all right, now what could I have done better to, get over that hump? These close games, how can I affect it? Those extra 2 points, do I get another stop at one possession, and then hopefully that changes? But I definitely start thinking about it that way rather than just, feeling for the guys.
you're seeing like this is a pivotal process for him to experience as a young player who has never been here before. And neither has Neemias Queta. 2 out of the 5 guys on the court have never played and never sniffed these minutes. And now here they are. And that's what makes the season challenging and rewarding. And that's why I loved the win the other night on Sunday, in Philadelphia, and why nights like tonight sting so much because it's right there. It's literally one more stop, one more shot. Derrick White had a great corner 3 look. Queta catches that ball and dunks it. Like Jalen gets that rebound. Like there are so many moments where it's just 1 or 2 plays and they have it. But these guys are right there and they're competing at a really high level, and you have to love that. Like it's been fun to watch, but the execution is just not where it has been in recent years, where you have vets like Al Horford and Drew Holiday who just get it, and they still make mistakes. It's basketball. I saw Drew Holiday the other night lost the ball against the Magic, no less, and Desmond Bane hit the game winner. Like it happens to even the best players, the most experienced players, the most veteran players in the league. But yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at right now with these guys, is that there's just going to be more mistakes. And the good news is, if you're watching, like I think probably the average Celtics fan is not overly concerned with their record at the end of the year. I want to see them pull together as many wins as possible. I've made that clear, but I think you're seeing a level of compete and a level of development while simultaneously just a lack of execution down the stretch that maybe will get better as the year goes on. Maybe it won't. And right now they're not on pace. I'll keep referencing, like I had them winning 45 games a season, so a little bit over 500. They're not on pace right now to achieve that. But again, it's very early in the season. It's just been 12 games, and certainly they could easily be 7-5 right now instead of 5-7 if a couple of these games go differently down the stretch. And so it's hard to say like, oh, I was totally wrong about this team and where they're at. But certainly that has been an issue so far in the early going. The other thing that I'll note about this game that I did like is I feel like Derrick White has been playing with a higher level of aggression these past few games that is not necessarily indicative of him being super efficient, but it's what you want to see from him on both ends. I thought that he was impactful tonight. He had 2 blocks in this one, 18 points, 7 assists, 5 boards. He took 20 shots, which was a team high, only made 7, but I think he got a lot of good looks. And he's facing more defensive pressure. He doesn't have the offensive weapons around him and the playmakers around him that he had in previous years, guys like Tatum and Drew and Al that are just kind of connective passers, which certainly has made his life harder. But at the same time, I do think that we're seeing the corner turn a little bit over this past weekend. We'll see how it pans out. It's too soon to say, but Derrick is a guy who kind of gets in a flow state on both ends. And when he's in his head, you can see it, you can feel it. You can see the way his head's down and all that. He had a couple moments like that tonight, but overall, an aggressive Derrick White is a good thing. You want to see him look for a shot. You want to see him drive for the basket. You want to see him not kind of doubt those looks. And I thought tonight that he made a positive step kind of in the right direction there. I do want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the sponsor of the show. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. I told many of you this, but I attended my first football game this past week, which was a lot of fun, and was super impressed by what I saw of Drake May. So I will certainly be picking more on Drake May for all the categories, all the player projections. So you can check that out. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. PrizePicks is also the best way to get action on sports in more than 40 plus states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. PrizePicks offer Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for a quick and easy deposit into your account this football season. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. So the one other guy I wanted to give a shout out to is someone who I haven't talked about a whole lot on the show, and that's Luka Garza. Luka Garza was really good in the first half of this one. He finished the game with 9 points and 8 rebounds, including 4 on the offensive end. He wasn't credited for a block, but I think he had some defensive altering plays. And overall, I think he showcased some really nice flashes of how he can be a good backup center for this team. Queta has been the better of the 2 centers so far this season. He's been more consistent. I think the numbers back that up. He's been a lob threat. I mean, he has some athletic abilities that Luka just doesn't possess. But I think you see the vision with Luka. He plays extremely hard, and he has a knack for getting offensive rebounds, and he was able to get for tonight, as did Kata. Kata finished with 8 and 10 in this one, including 4 offensive rebounds. But I just like the level of hustle that he plays with. He drew a charge. He always kind of seems to do that. I have a story on Celtics blog that you can check out. I spoke to Luka Garza's father extensively about his journey, upbringing, and all of that, and then landing in Boston and kind of getting the call from Brad Stevens that the Celtics were interested in him. So a lot of interesting stuff there. Check out that feature in full. My most extensive piece of writing on any of the new acquisitions thus far. But the thing that I'll say about Luka is that I think he brings this like tenacity, this intensity, this desire, this heart to this team that is exactly kind of what Joe Mazzulla is preaching. And he didn't play a perfect game tonight. I think I would be singing his praises a little bit more if his first half stint had been kind of similar to his second half stint. But I do think that he was more impactful in his first half stint. But I think through these past few games, I mentioned this a little bit the other night, but he has shown why Boston went out and sought him out. And again, he's on a minimum deal, 2-year deal. Celtics can, kind of continue to leverage him throughout the year to give Kata breaks. They get different things from different players as well. But I thought he deserved a shout out after this one, certainly, because you could just see he makes things happen when he's out there. And I felt like tonight he didn't convert necessarily in all the opportunities, but he's causing chaos. He's blocking out his guy. And last year he led the league in charges per possession, and I think you see kind of where that comes from. And he also is a really strong offensive rebounder. In fact, he has the highest offensive rebounding percentage on this team. And so he's a guy, I know he's gotten a lot of flack, a lot of criticism so far early in the season, and I think that he has some defensive limitations. He has some defensive rebounding limitations, and I'm not 100% sure exactly what his offensive game looks like at the moment. Like, he shoots threes. He hasn't shot them at a particularly high clip this season, nor in his NBA career. One of the interesting things that his dad told me is that there's a data service called Noa Basketball, no relation, that monitors shot attempts for NBA players across 28 teams. The Celtics are actually one of 2 teams that does not use this data service. And one thing that it was pretty fascinating is he attempted more shots last year than any other player in the NBA by about 12,000. So really interesting. Just, the work ethic is definitely there. It's something that is well known about Luka. And he's achieved a ton in his basketball career, despite growing up. Everybody told his dad, like, your son's not going to make it on the NBA. Or not going to make it as a basketball player. Forget the NBA, because he's just not athletic enough. He was tripping over his own feet. And here he is, obviously 5th year in the league, and also former National College Player of the Year, and has accomplished a whole lot. So he's a very compelling story, very interesting. Check out that full story. I'll put it in the description as well. My full Luka Garza story, and I thought that he had some really nice moments in this one. But overall, not going to sugarcoat it. This was a tough loss. First night of a back-to-back. Great opportunity for them to become a 500 team. Instead, now they're 2 games below 500. And there are a lot of teams around the league that are struggling, underachieving. The Clippers, the Warriors are 2 that I had kind of having a better year than they've had. Some teams are overachieving. I don't know that I saw the Bucks being where they're at right now. And this Celtics team, I think the on-court product is kind of what I anticipated, but they're just closing out a few less games than I think Mazzulla, the coaching staff, the players themselves hoped. So tough one for sure. You can check out the players' reactions in full. Jaylen Brown, Derrick White, Jordan Walsh all spoke after this one. Credit to Jaylen. He took full accountability of his miscues kind of late in this game. Jordan reflected on kind of this larger role, and Derrick also spoke about what he saw in those final possessions and just acclimating to the season. He's had a tough start offensively from an efficiency standpoint, but has continued to do a lot of things for this team defensively. So check out all those press conferences, including Joe Mazzulla, who I think this was one of the press conferences he seemed the least happy. And I mean, he doesn't seem happy after losses. Honestly, it's not like he's like celebrating after wins, but he was not really interested in saying too much in those ones. So a lot of brief answers from Mazzulla. You can check out that in full as well on CLNS Media, as well as our 2-hour reaction show, which we have after every single game. We discussed a whole lot in that one, so go check that out. And as always, thank you for watching. Let me know, was there anything positive you saw in this game that I missed? There probably was. I've been awake for almost 24 hours now, so it's possible I may have missed some positive things here. But overall, I think the Jordan Walsh story is one that I'm continuing to monitor, because it's really fun to see a guy who I think a lot of people counted out and expected, maybe he's done, maybe he's just not an NBA player, and now here he is playing some of the best defense that I've seen. I mean, he was probably the best defender on the floor tonight, which is really kind of striking when you think about the fact that a week ago he was completely getting DNPs and seemed like he was not even close to sniffing the rotation. So a lot can change in a week. Josh Minot had a tough one tonight. He only played 8 minutes. So the guy is kind of a pendulum swinging at this point, and guys are getting opportunities and capitalizing on them, and then other guys are getting those opportunities and you never know who's going to play, who's going to close, and what's going to happen in the Celtics team right now. So as always, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll be back with more content later today because we're probably watching this on Thursday morning or Wednesday morning. Celtics will play the Grizzlies back at home, the second night of a back-to-back.